Medieval castles looked strong on the outside, but inside they were cold and rough, no heating, no warm floors. Yet kings still lived in them. How did they stay warm? The answers aren't always fancy, but they sure had to get creative. It all started with the walls. The thick stone walls that made castles great for defense were terrible for staying warm. Unlike wood, stone absorbs cold and holds onto it. A 3-foot thick castle wall would radiate coldness into rooms like medieval air conditioning nobody asked for. If walls could talk, castle walls would just be chattering teeth. These massive structures took forever to warm up. Records from Windsor Castle show that even after fires had been burning for 2 full days, visitors still complained about the bone-chilling cold inside. Kings would often wear multiple layers of royal robes, not because it looked majestic, but because hypothermia isn't a good look with a crown. Windows made everything worse. Medieval glass was expensive, so most castle windows were just narrow slits covered with wooden shutters, oiled cloth, or thin animal horn. Even in royal chambers, windows leaked cold air constantly. The royal window maker was probably the only tradesman who could get away with doing a drafty job. Great halls with ceilings reaching 40 feet high meant all the warm air simply rose up and away from the people shivering below. One medieval writer complained that in the king's hall, a man's face might burn while his back freezes. Medieval nobles developed what historians call throne zone heating. Only the part of you touching the seat got warm. Most castles had floors made of stone or packed earth, which pulled heat away from the room. Kings who walked barefoot on castle floors quickly learned that cold feet had nothing to do with wedding jitters. In some northern European castles, water left in basins would freeze solid overnight, even in rooms where fires had burned the previous day. The weather didn't help matters either. During the medieval period, Europe experienced what's now called the Little Ice Age. Winter temperatures were significantly colder than today, with rivers regularly freezing solid enough to hold markets and festivals on the ice. Records show that the Thames River in London froze over at least 23 times between 1309 and 1400, with ice thick enough for oxen to walk across it. The sheer size of castles made heating nearly impossible. Hampton Court Palace had over 1,000 rooms. Guards in cold corridors rotated duties every hour because staying longer risked frostbite. The smart guards figured out that guarding the kitchen was mysteriously the most popular assignment in winter. During the Little Ice Age, from the 14th to 19th centuries, one French king's records show his castle used 6,000 logs in a single winter month. And people were still cold. The royal woodcutters had the safest jobs in the kingdom. They were the only ones who worked up a sweat in January. Kings weren't about to move into cozy wooden cottages and give up their stone symbols of power. These freezing fortresses needed warming solutions worthy of royalty. After all, when you've got a castle turning into an icebox around you, you need something more powerful than a simple fire. The most obvious solution to castle coldness was fire, but not the modest flames you might have at home. Medieval kings built fireplaces that were absolutely massive, often large enough for a person to stand inside without even bending over. These weren't just fireplaces. They were fire rooms. In many royal castles, the main fireplaces measured up to 10 feet across and 7 feet high. At Bodiam Castle in England, the kitchen fireplace was 15 feet wide, roughly the size of a small bedroom in today's homes. These weren't just designed to warm the castle, they were also perfect for those awkward moments when you needed to burn evidence of a failed coup attempt. The fuel demands of these mammoth hearths were staggering. A single royal fireplace could consume an entire tree in just one day. Historical records show that royal castles burned through 3 tons of wood each week during winter months, and that was just for the personal chambers. The royal woodcutters must have had the most secure jobs in medieval times, with constant demand for their services. Despite their impressive size, these giant fireplaces were shockingly inefficient. The massive openings created powerful updrafts that actually sucked more heat up the chimney than they released into the room. Some estimates suggest that up to 80% of heat from medieval fireplaces went straight up and out. The medieval saying money burns probably started with a king looking at his fireplace. Making matters worse, these giant hearths produced incredible amounts of smoke. The chimneys, while impressive in size, often didn't draw properly. Many castle rooms were perpetually hazy, with smoke that stung the eyes and blackened the ceilings. Castle servants assigned to tend these fires had some of the worst jobs in the kingdom, constantly battling smoke and hauling endless loads of firewood. A few months ago, I had no idea what a health ring even was until my fiancée got me one, and I have to say, I'm shocked this isn't a widely known and used product. It tracks my stress levels, and what I found out is that some supplements made my stress score spike, while others actually helped bring it down. I adjusted a few things based on that, and honestly, I feel 10 years younger. My wife mainly uses it to track her menstrual cycles, and she is obsessed with her sleep quality score. I noticed they are currently running a limited 69% discount, but I don't know how long it will last. It's currently only $60, and it's clear. This one is the best bang for your buck, with other health rings priced around $350 with less functions. They managed to price it this low because they cut out the middleman like Amazon, Walmart, etc., who drive up the price and take a big margin, ending up with the customer paying 3 to 5 times more. If you are on TV, you can check it out yourself by pausing the video and scanning the QR code with your phone camera or clicking the first link in the description of this video. Most castles didn't settle for just 1 or 2 fireplaces. Dover Castle had 20 major fireplaces throughout its buildings. The Tower of London featured 32 separate hearths. Each one required constant attention and enormous amounts of fuel, creating an army of workers whose sole job was keeping the fires going. These giant fireplaces weren't just practical, they were also symbols of power. The larger your fireplace, the wealthier and more important you obviously were. Kings competed to build the biggest, most elaborate hearths, decorating them with royal coats of arms, intricate stone carvings, and sometimes even gold leaf. Nothing said, "I'm filthy rich," quite like having a fireplace you could park a horse in. The locations of fireplaces were carefully planned. The Great Hall, where the king entertained guests and conducted business, always featured the largest and most impressive fireplace, situated at the end opposite the entrance. When visitors arrived, they'd immediately see the enormous blaze, a not-so-subtle reminder of the king's wealth and power. Practical improvements developed over time. By the 14th century, fireplace designers began angling the sides of the fireplace opening to reflect more heat into the room. They also discovered that raising the hearth slightly off the floor helped distribute warmth more effectively. These might seem like obvious improvements to us now, but they represented cutting-edge heating technology for medieval times. Even with all these massive fires blazing throughout the castle, warmth remained elusive. Kings needed additional strategies to battle the persistent cold. What else could possibly help when even the biggest fires weren't enough? Beyond massive fireplaces, medieval kings turned to textiles as their next line of defense against the brutal cold. Tapestries became the medieval equivalent of insulation, transforming bare stone walls into something that actually kept heat inside a room. These weren't just decorative wall hangings. They were functional necessities for winter survival. Castle inventories from the Middle Ages frequently list hundreds of tapestries at a single royal residence. The royal castle at Westminster had more than 300 tapestries in the 14th century, with over 50 in the private chambers alone. The king might not have had indoor plumbing, but he did have textile-based temperature control. The most effective tapestries were thick, heavy, and made from wool. They hung slightly away from the wall, creating a small air pocket that functioned as additional insulation. This gap trapped a layer of warmer air between the cold stone and the room, preventing heat from being sucked directly into the walls. Medieval tapestry hangers knew what they were doing. Modern insulation works on the exact same principle. Particularly valuable tapestries were portable and moved when royalty traveled between castles. Royal accounts show that carts dedicated solely to transporting tapestries accompanied the household on royal progresses. Talk about high-maintenance travel. These kings couldn't even stay at a different castle without bringing their own wall coverings. Bed curtains represented another crucial textile defense against the cold. Royal beds were draped with heavy curtains that could be pulled closed, creating a small enclosed space where body heat stayed trapped. Records from the royal wardrobe show that a single royal bed could use up to 50 yards of fabric for its curtains. The most luxurious beds had multiple layers, outer curtains of heavy velvet or wool for insulation, and inner curtains of silk for comfort. When it came to personal warmth, Fur became the ultimate status symbol. While commoners might line their clothes with cheap rabbit fur, royal garments featured ermine, sable, and marten, the most expensive options available. A single royal fur-lined robe could use the pelts of hundreds of animals. You think designer clothes are expensive today? The typical royal fur budget exceeded what a regular worker might earn in 20 years. Floor coverings also played a key role in castle heating strategies. The royal household accounts show regular purchases of rushes, which were scattered on floors and replaced when they became too dirty or compressed. For royal chambers, woven mats or carpets provided additional insulation from the cold stone floors. Inventories list up to 12 expensive carpets in a single royal chamber, an extraordinary luxury at a time when most people lived their entire lives without seeing a single carpet. Even the walls that didn't get tapestries received textile treatments. Cloth hangings, called dorsers, were placed behind chairs and benches, ensuring that when someone leaned back, they weren't touching freezing stone. Window openings got special treatment too, with thick woolen curtains to block drafts. Royal household accounts frequently mention payments for window cloths and door hangings, specifically designed to stop cold air from entering rooms. The collective effect of all these textiles was remarkable. With tapestries on the walls, carpets on the floors, and curtains around the beds and windows, a royal chamber could be up to 20 degrees warmer than a bare stone room. No wonder the textile departments of royal households were some of the largest and most expensive to maintain. While these fabric solutions helped fight the cold, medieval royalty had other clever warming tricks up their fur-lined sleeves. Kitchens were often the warmest part of the castle, with huge fires used for cooking that also served as essential heating sources. Medieval castle designers weren't just thinking about food when they planned these massive cooking areas, they were creating heat factories for the entire structure. The main kitchen fires in royal castles burned constantly, day and night, whether meals were being prepared or not. These weren't small cooking flames. The kitchen hearths could roast 6 or 7 whole animals simultaneously. These fires never went out, not even in summer, because the bread ovens needed to be ready at all times. The castle baker had the medieval version of a year-round tan from standing next to those blazing ovens. Many clever architectural tricks helped spread kitchen heat throughout the castle. The smartest royal builders placed living quarters strategically near kitchens to absorb some of their warmth. In some castles, the royal bedchamber shared a wall with the kitchen, allowing heat to transfer directly through the stone. During especially cold winters, records show some royalty would actually sleep in rooms directly above the kitchen, where the rising heat made for much more comfortable nights. The heat output from a medieval castle kitchen was staggering. Temperature readings taken in reconstructed castle kitchens have shown that they could reach 120 degrees Fahrenheit during peak cooking times. Kitchen workers basically had 2 jobs: cook the food and be human radiators for the rest of the castle. Castle kitchens were enormous operations. At Windsor Castle, the main kitchen complex covered an area larger than a modern basketball court, with multiple hearths, bread ovens, and roasting spits all going at once. These kitchens generated enough heat to warm several connecting chambers. The passageways between kitchens and dining halls were deliberately designed to retain and distribute heat. In many castles, food traveled through several antechambers on its way to the royal table, and each of these rooms benefited from the heat passing through. Castle designers even built warming compartments into the walls between kitchens and dining areas, where dishes could be stored briefly while also allowing heat to pass through to adjacent rooms. Cooking smells were an unfortunate side effect of this heating strategy. The aroma of whatever was being prepared in the kitchen would drift through nearby rooms. Historical accounts from castle visitors often mention how the royal bedchambers smelled perpetually of roasted meat or baking bread. You might be nobility, but your bedroom smelling like a pot roast was just part of the deal. Water pipes were sometimes routed near or through kitchen areas to prevent freezing. In the harshest winters, this kitchen-adjacent plumbing was often the only water source that remained unfrozen. Despite the cleverness of using cooking fires for warmth, the heat never fully reached the castle's furthest rooms. For truly luxurious heating, medieval royalty sometimes turned to a far more sophisticated solution, drawing inspiration from ancient Roman engineering. Some lucky medieval royals got to experience the luxury of heated floors thanks to an ancient Roman technology called hypocausts. These sophisticated heating systems ran hot air through spaces beneath the floor, turning the cold stone into a pleasant source of warmth. While fireplaces warmed you from one direction, hypocaust systems heated from below, making them the deluxe option for truly cold-resistant castle rooms. Hypocausts worked by channeling heat from a furnace through hollow spaces under the floor. A fire would be lit in a furnace room, and the hot air and smoke would circulate through a network of brick supports and channels beneath the floor stones. The heat would then rise up through the floor, warming the entire room from the ground up. Medieval floor heating. Because nothing says royal comfort like not having to hop across freezing stone floors while making a midnight trip to the royal chamber pot. This heating system required serious infrastructure. Beneath a typical hypocaust-heated chamber lay a subfloor space about 2 feet high, supported by hundreds of short brick pillars. The floor above was made of special large tiles that would absorb and radiate heat. Building a single hypocaust system could require more than 4,000 specialized bricks and tiles, a massive investment in both materials and skilled labor. Unlike modern heating systems that warm up quickly, hypocausts needed time to work their magic. Historical records suggest it could take up to 6 hours to properly heat a room with a hypocaust system. Servants would need to light the furnace well before their noble masters planned to use the chamber. Once fully heated, these systems maintained a steady warmth that lasted far longer than fireplace heat. Hypocausts were ridiculously fuel-hungry. A single hypocaust-heated chamber could consume up to half a cord of wood per day, roughly equivalent to what an average medieval family might use in 2 weeks. This made hypocaust heating an extreme luxury, reserved for only the wealthiest nobles and the most important royal chambers. These systems weren't common in medieval castles across Europe. They appeared most frequently in monasteries, royal residences in particularly cold regions, and bathhouses. The main royal palace at Westminster had just 3 hypocaust-heated chambers, all connected to the same furnace system. When visitors were escorted to a hypocaust-heated room, it was like being invited to the medieval VIP section. Congratulations, you're important enough to have warm feet. The technology wasn't without problems. Smoke leakage was a common issue, with many royal complaints recorded about smoky chambers. If not properly cleaned, deadly carbon monoxide could seep into living spaces through cracks or damaged flooring. Multiple historical accounts exist of castle residents found dead in hypocaust-heated rooms when systems malfunctioned. The temperature achieved by medieval hypocausts was impressive for the time. Experiments in reconstructed hypocaust systems show they could maintain a room at about 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, positively tropical by medieval standards, when most castle rooms hovered around 45 to 50 degrees in winter. Even with all these technological heating methods, medieval castles still struggled with the cold. Resourceful nobles eventually discovered that sometimes the best sources of warmth were much simpler and didn't require any building materials at all. When all the expensive heating methods still left medieval castles chilly, nobles turned to something that generated heat for free. Other people. Human bodies produce heat constantly, and medieval castle dwellers quickly figured out how to harness this biological fact to their advantage. The Great Hall of a castle became warmer by design when filled with people. During feasts and large gatherings, the temperature in these enormous spaces could rise by 10 to 15 degrees from body heat alone. Historical records from winter feasts note how guests would arrive shivering but soon remove outer layers as the combined warmth of hundreds of bodies transformed the frigid hall into something almost comfortable. Medieval crowdfunding took on a whole new meaning when it came to heating the castle. A busy feast in a great hall could pack in 400 to 500 people, each person radiating roughly the same heat as a 100-watt light bulb. Combined, this created a significant warming effect. Castle stewards understood this dynamic well, sometimes scheduling major gatherings specifically during the coldest weeks of winter. The medieval invitation that read, "Feast at the castle tonight," secretly meant, "Please come over and be part of our heating system." Many royal calendars from the period show a suspicious clustering of events in January and February, the coldest months of the year in Europe. Even in day-to-day life, body heat played an important role in castle warming strategies. Servants were often assigned sleeping spaces near important chambers, not just for convenience, but also to help warm the surrounding areas. Quarters for ladies-in-waiting were typically positioned to share walls with the queen's chamber, creating a human buffer zone against the cold. Being royal meant you got to use your subjects as human space heaters. Talk about power with practical benefits. The sleeping arrangements in medieval castles reflected this heat-sharing strategy. Rather than spreading people throughout the castle's many rooms, residents would cluster together in fewer spaces during winter. Even nobles who might normally enjoy private sleeping chambers would double or triple up during the coldest months. Medieval nobles learned that pride couldn't keep you warm at night, but the snoring knight from the next county over somehow could. Castle household accounts from winter often show fewer rooms being used, but with more firewood allocated to each, concentrating both people and heating resources for maximum effect. Body heat was particularly important for keeping beds warm. Unlike modern beds with their layers of insulation, medieval beds relied heavily on the warmth of their occupants. Many royal beds were designed to accommodate not just the noble sleeper, but also several personal servants whose assigned duty was to pre-warm the sheets. Bedroom servants would literally climb into the royal bed first, warming it up before their master or mistress arrived for sleep. Imagine having royal bed pre-warmer as your job title on a medieval resume. Probably not the career your parents hoped for. Records from royal households list specific servants whose job title roughly translates to bed warmer, possibly the strangest job in medieval times. Large dogs also played their part in this heating strategy. Most castles maintained packs of hunting hounds that, when not chasing deer, served as four-legged heating devices. These dogs would sleep in the Great Hall and other living spaces, adding their body heat to the mix. The phrase three-dog night wasn't just a band name. It described how many dogs you needed in your bed to survive until morning. Some castle inventories list specific sleeping rugs for dogs that were positioned strategically near the lord's chair or bed. Candles and torches, necessary for light, contributed to the heating effort as well. A grand feast might feature hundreds of candles and dozens of torches, each adding a small amount of heat to the room. When combined with the warmth of many bodies, these small heat sources made a noticeable difference. The medieval equivalent of turning up the thermostat was simply lighting another 50 candles. One medieval account describes a Christmas feast where the hall became so warm from people, candles, and a large fire that the windows had to be opened despite the December cold outside. The strategic use of human warmth shows just how creative medieval castle dwellers had to be to survive winter in their impressive but impractical stone fortresses. From massive fireplaces to sophisticated floor heating to simply packing a room with people, medieval kings used every trick available to fight the cold. In many ways, these ancient heating methods remind us how much effort went into the most basic comforts we now take for granted. Staying warm in a castle required planning, resources, and sometimes just inviting over a few hundred of your closest friends for dinner.